Let's get more now. We can talk to Ashton Cole from the Road Haulage Association, who joins us this morning. Thank you for being here. Now, how difficult then is this for lorry drivers? Two ways to look at it, I suppose. Lorry drivers not doing enough to secure their vehicles. On the other hand, I understand that new and sophisticated tactics are being used.
Good morning, Anna, and yes, thank you for having me on. Yes, you're right. Firstly, we need to say, obviously, we support any and all measures, all reasonable measures, to keep the border secure, and it is important that drivers and hauliers, and indeed anyone crossing the border, plays their part in keeping the border secure. But we do not want to see drivers and companies who have done everything right still being punished, and unfortunately, that does still seem to be the case. The fact is, these are organised criminals who are helping people break into trucks. They adapt their tactics depending upon the measures taken to prevent them. You heard a driver there mention about cutting the roof. So being aware of that, now you sometimes now get cameras and mirrors and ways to check the roof. They're now actually getting quite adept at repairing the damage behind them, so making it even harder for them to be traced. I think it's important the scheme adapts, recognises the changing tactics, adapts to them, and also has a proper understanding of how goods move across the border, and therefore what appropriate measures can be taken in order to effectively prevent people breaking into trucks to try and get into the UK illegally.
Yeah, and I suppose it needs to recognise something else. How stressful is this for your members?
Oh, incredibly. It really is something that's off-putting. We need drivers to fulfil this really important job. We all rely on the work that HGV drivers do.
Yeah.
But the idea that they could face significant penalties despite doing everything that they can reasonably do is obviously significantly off-putting. I think it's important, again, we need to make really, really clear, drivers should not be expected to be security guards and directly confronting these individuals. Because again, sometimes these individuals can be incredibly desperate and also ingenious. There's really not enough information out there for what avenues of help a driver can access. Again, we've heard reports of drivers reporting a clandestine entrant on board and then attracting a penalty despite seeking assistance. This is the idea is that when you get to the UK border, sufficient checks and procedures should have been followed. There should be nobody on board, but unfortunately, there are always going to be circumstances where occasionally that does occur. It needs to be the steps that need to be taken in order to protect vehicles and make sure that anybody who may have got on board has been safely removed, and the assistance that a driver can find in doing so needs to be much, much clearer.
And these fines are supposed to be obviously a deterrent. They're supposed to make sure that hauliers do all they can do to secure their vehicles. But surely if you get fined and you can prove the steps that you've taken, as you say, sort of mirrors and everything else, can't that fine be waived?
There are ways that the fines can be reduced. There is an accreditation scheme that we at the RHA advised our members to join as soon as the scheme was created. Unfortunately, that has led to some delays in getting the accreditation completed. Also, it's important to say, I think, to any driver that's listening who is unlucky enough to be caught in this situation, there is an element of means testing on these penalties. So while, yes, the levels are designed to be deterrents, there are reductions that can be applied. And if anyone is unfortunate enough to be in this situation, I would urge them to, whilst it may be difficult, follow that means testing route. To again submit additional evidence, and hopefully that impact can be reduced.
And I suppose that some of the theory behind these fines are that there could be some lorry drivers who take money in return for migrants coming across. So how do you mitigate against that?
Unfortunately, yes, there will always be some. The minority. Of course. The majority of the drivers are just doing an honest day's pay, and this is just one of the threats they have to deal with. Again, this is why it's important the scheme can understand, can adapt to changing tactics, to changing realities. As you say, you heard from an operator there saying 300 kilometres away, they expect a driver to carry on straight on, because now, yes, we are finding that people are trying to break into trucks even further away from the ports. It's not just localised to the Calais Dunkirk area anymore.
Such a difficult issue. I mean, are you confident that we can find a fair way forward?
I think we can. Government is listening to us. We are in regular contact with them, raising these cases. There's just been a review completed by the border inspector. We submitted evidence to that. So we know that the scheme is being reviewed. We hope, we understand how the industry needs to play its part. We want to play our part. And hopefully working with the government, we can find a way that does effectively keep our borders safe.
Ashton, thank you. Now, listen, before you go, I'd like to ask you about another question, but it's highly pertinent to the Road Haulage Association as well. It's decision day for the Lower Thames crossing today. And obviously, we've been waiting some time, haven't we, to find out whether the proposed tunnel under the Thames between Gravesend and Tilbury would go ahead. What are your thoughts and feelings ahead of that decision?
Well, it's important we invest in the infrastructure that is the roads of our country. For our members, it's their workplace. It's the only way that they can do the job they need to do. Every time an HGV is stuck in traffic, that's adding cost. And unfortunately, given the low profit margins that hauliers have, costs end up always being passed on to the consumer in the end. So it means higher costs in the shops for everybody else. Although we all know the issues there are in Kent with traffic, and particularly crossing the Thames, we see the Lower Thames crossing is an absolutely vital piece of infrastructure, and we are very hopeful that it will be approved and will be officially announced as going ahead today.
Hopeful. Do you think it will happen?
We think it's absolutely necessary that it does. It's one of the situations where it is abundantly clear that something needs to be done. Understanding, of course, difficult economic choices need to be made. However, we fear additional damage that will be caused if this scheme is delayed any further.
Okay, well, we'll find out later. Listen, thank you for your thoughts ahead of that and for being with us on the show this morning.